This video features review items for board licensure examination for professional teachers focusing on general education English subject. Question 1. Which of the following sentences is not true about communication? Answer: C. Communication is a skill that is considered unique to human beings who are capable solely of verbal language and is able to encode and to interpret meanings from messages. Choice C is an obvious answer because of the phrase solely of verbal language. Remember that communication can either be in the form of verbal or nonverbal communication. Question 2. The process of communication mainly involves the following components: a sender, a channel, a receiver, and a feedback. Which among the following does not correspond to this premise? Answer: B. Channel is a medium that the sender uses to transmit the messages which exclusively take a verbal form. Similar to the explanation of the previous item, remember that messages or communication can either be in nonverbal or verbal form. Here are the descriptions of the choices for your further reading. Question 3. Noise in the communication process pertains to anything that hindrances and interferes with the communication process. Noise includes things like hunger, fatigue, headache, stress, or anything that prevents one from giving his or her full attention to someone sharing his thoughts. What type of noise is this? Answer: B. Physiological noise. What one feels physically, like hunger, fatigue, and headache, may definitely affect one's ability to communicate. In the communication process, this is called physiological noise. Here are the descriptions of the choices for your further reading. Question 4. Communication ethics is defined as a set of moral principles held by a society, group, or individual. Which of the following scenarios does not adhere to communication ethics? Answer: B. An attentive attendee on a seminar, constantly asking questions, questioning the speaker's authority and credibility. Asking questions during a seminar or conference is expected for the clarification of concepts discussed. However, if the questions are delivered in a rude tone, and when the question is already directed to question the credibility of the speaker, then this action is already considered inappropriate. Question 5. Communication is a complex process which involves the intermingling of elements of language complying with the rules of sounds, of words, and of grammar. Which feature of language is described in this premise? Answer: B. Language as a system. Language is considered a system as there are some subsystems one should know in order to fully be competent in using a language. One should have the knowledge of sounds, of words, and of rules on sentence construction before he is able to fully make use of a language. More technically, the knowledge of sounds refers to a person's knowledge of phonology. Knowledge of words refers to one's lexical or vocabulary knowledge of the language to be learned, while the knowledge of sentence constructions refers to one's knowledge on syntax and grammar. Here are the descriptions of the choices for your further reading. Question 6. In terms of verbal language, this pertains to a branch of linguistics concerned with orderly association of sounds in language. Answer: B. Phonology. As was mentioned in the previous item, phonology is a branch of linguistics concerned with the orderly association of sounds in languages. Here are the descriptions of the choices for your further reading. Question 7. This is a subfield of linguistics and semiotics that studies the way in which context contributes to meaning. Answer D. Pragmatics. This concept was discussed in the previous item. Which of the following sentences best describe the language as symbolic? Answer D. Language is continuously varying and connotations of words change and new meanings are given to words. This concept was discussed in the previous item. Question 9. Why is the capacity of language considered unique to human beings? Answer C. Animals have a mode of communication, but it is not as systematic as the human language. It is true that animals can communicate. Some animals do this in very complex ways which may have some similarities with human languages. However, no animal's mode of communication has all the features of human language. Question 10. Which of the following statements best describe the term language community? Answer D. Language community pertains to the people who speak your primary language and whom you interact with using the same language every day. Language communities may be different from your social community. There are possibilities wherein the community you interact with do not speak your main language. Language community refers to the group who speak your main language or the language that you use in day-to-day activities. Hence, there may be a number of language communities in every social communities. Question 11. As you grow up, you are able to make use of the language that is spoken by the people around you. Which of the following terms does this phenomenon pertain to? Answer D. Language acquisition. Language acquisition is a process where one is able to make use of a language naturally as he grows up. This is usually the process in which people learn their native language or their mother tongue. Here are the descriptions of the choices for your further reading. Answer C. Anticipate objections from your listener, follow through on what you say, and communicate a little at a time. Question 12. According to Lacerna 2012, to purposely comprehend the communication ethics, the following principles of ethical communication should be stressed except for one. Choice C is more of a step or tip on how to deliver speeches or talks. Question 13. Dr. Vergara was invited to an event of a mining company to talk about Philippines' environmental status of the modern day. Being an environmentalist, he is very much against mining since it greatly destroys the environment, though he is asked to avoid giving his own opinions regarding the matter to avoid any damage on the name of the company. When he is asked by an audience, he chose to express factual information that he believes people ought to know. Which principles of ethical communication did he follow? Answer A. Advocate truthfulness, accuracy, honesty, and reason as essential to the integrity of communication. The context of the situation called for the truthfulness, accuracy, and honesty from the concerned person in expressing his opinion. Question 14. The creation of meaning and organization of thoughts and putting these in oral and written form require competence in order to acquire good and effective communication. Which of the following sentences adhere to this idea? Answer C. One can be considered effective communicator when the receiver of the message finds the message clear and understandable. As compared to the holistic idea expressed by choice C, the other choices express only one form of communication, the verbal communication. Question 15. Which of the following ideas is true about communication models? Answer: A. Communication models explain the framework on how communication takes place. Put in mind that communication model serves as a graphical representation of how communication process works. Choice B is wrong because communication models show not the effectiveness of each element but rather the function of each element in the process. Though choice D talks about the functionality of each element, disparity on the said functionality are not presented in the models. Rather, their relationships in the process are emphasized. Choice C is wrong as communication does not only happen in scholarly contexts but most forms of social interactions. Question 16. This model of communication illustrates that communication exchange is reciprocal. Both the sender and the receiver are accountable in achieving effective communication. The meaning is shared and built by the communicators. Which of the following communication models does this description pertain to? Answer: A. Barland's model of communication. Barland's model is a transactional model of communication in 1970 for basic interpersonal communication, which articulates that sending and receiving of messages happen simultaneously between people. Though similar to Choice C, the Osgood and Schramm model of communication is a circular rather than linear experience that involves a sender who encodes a message and a recipient who decodes it. It also explores the idea of semantic barriers such as beliefs, values, or background that can change the way the message is interpreted. Since there is no mention of these semantic barriers, then choice A is more appropriate. Here are the descriptions of the choices for your further reading. Question 17. President Rodrigo Duterte delivered his State of the Nation address on July 23, 2018. What type of communication is this? Answer: B. Public communication. Public communication is where the sender is focused and typically occurs when one person conveys information to an audience. In public communication, source or messages from a single person will reach or receive by a huge number of audiences. But in this communication, there is no mutual feedbacks between source and receiver like small group communication, and it's only focused on the speaker. Here are the descriptions of the choices for your further reading. Question 18. Mr. Tan, the CEO and President of Steel Strand Corporation, called for a meeting among the company executives to discuss his plans for the year. What type of communication is this? Answer: D. Organizational communication. As the context centered on a company, the meeting is clearly a form of an organizational communication.